The icy, piercing venom slid down my throat, a searing pain as if organs were being burned and torn apart, still stubbornly lodged in my throat. I forced my eyes open wide, gasping for breath, cold sweat instantly soaking the entire back of my shirt. There was no pitch-dark, cold basement in sight, nor the face with a ferocious cold smile. Sunshine poured through a dusty gauze window, speckled light falling on the wooden desk, and the air was filled with the familiar smell of mold and camphor. The calendar on the wall clearly stopped at the summer 8 years ago. At the corner of the desk, a red university admission notice lay quietly, its gilded emblem glittering in the sunlight. I'm back. Back to the day when all the tragedy hadn't happened yet and the fork in fate had just opened. Memories from my previous life roared into my mind like a tide. My good best friend Sarah, who appeared to be attentive and thoughtful on the surface, was actually a hidden venomous snake in the shadows. She was jealous of my acceptance to a top university, jealous of everything I had. When I trusted her without defense, she secretly swapped my major choices, ruined my social life, usurped my family's assets, and finally, on a stormy night, personally shoved a poison-laced drink into my hand, watching me die in pain and convulsions. That kind of hate, strong enough to make bones tremble, grew wild in my blood. But I didn't scream, nor cry. I drew a deep breath and violently shoved all the surging murderous intent and hatred back to the deepest part of my heart. In this life, I would not be the fool anyone can ride over. Outside the door came the sound of brisk, clear high heels. Anna, what are you spacing out for? Mom and I have been waiting for you for a long time. The door was pushed open directly, and Sarah walked in wearing a flamboyant pink dress, her face wearing an innocent yet enthusiastic smile, naturally coming over to take my hand. Her fingertips were cold, just like the venomous snake that strangled me in my past life. I stood up obediently, letting her pull me toward the guest room lobby. Sitting on the lobby couch were my adoptive parents. The adoptive father was sipping tea at a slow pace, while the adoptive mother affectionately held Sarah's other hand. In this family, though I am nominally their adopted daughter, I have always been nothing more than the stool and ATM they prepared for Sarah. Anna, the adoptive father said, setting the teacup down, his gaze cold as it swept over me, cutting straight to the point. You and Sarah both got into the same university, but the dorm resources are limited, and I've heard this year the spots are particularly tight. Sarah has always been weak and can't tolerate being in a crowded environment. You, as the sister, when the day you check in, remember to give way to her. Let her choose a room first. Sarah, upon hearing this, immediately hugged the adoptive mother's arm, speaking in a coy, spoiled voice. Dad, what are you saying? Anna is the kindest to me. I believe Anna will give me the best single room. Right, Anna? As she spoke, she shot me a look full of provocation and pride. In my previous life, I was trampled down here, not only yielding the single room but foolishly moving into the leftover abandoned dormitory she chose, thereby stepping into the trap she set. I lifted my head, a flawless, obedient smile spreading across my face. Of course, sister's body is unwell. It's only natural that I take care of you. Hearing my answer, a trace of contempt and triumph flashed in Sarah's eyes, and the adoptive parents nodded in satisfaction. However, I said with a smile, turning toward the safe in the corner of the study, in a very calm tone, since you're going to college, isn't it time to settle those education funds and asset proofs that were arranged in my name before? After all, the school requires proof of legitimate funding sources. The adoptive father's expression subtly changed. In the previous life, they had exploited my young age and lack of legal knowledge, secretly embezzling the maintenance funds left by my biological parents, and laundered them to buy Sarah designer bags and luxury goods. You child, why does the whole family talk about these things? The adoptive mother hastily interrupted me, flustered. It's fine. I'm just preparing materials according to the school's procedures. I calmly opened the desk drawer, took out a copy of my personal assets that I had prepared long ago right in front of them, and quietly pressed my own signature on it, then casually tucked away a few crucial transfer vouchers that had been tucked inside. The welcome banquet for the new semester was held at the city's most luxurious restaurant. My adoptive parents invited all their friends and relatives, ostensibly to celebrate me and Sarah, but in reality it became Sarah's personal stage. In the hall, glasses clinked and clattered. Sarah wore a custom evening gown and moved among the crowd like a noble princess. After 3 rounds of drinks, my adoptive father stood up loudly, raised his glass, and announced to the guests, "Thank you all for coming. Today, besides celebrating that the 2 kids have been admitted to university, I have another piece of good news to announce. Our Sarah has already secured the only recommended spot for studying overseas at a top international university after enrollment." The hall erupted in exclamations and applause. Relatives crowded around to praise Sarah for her promising future. I sat in a corner, watching this scene with a cold, indifferent gaze. That overseas exchange spot was clearly obtained by me, thanks to my top 10 provincial exam results and perfect academic background. Last night, my adoptive father, in his elder status, forcibly altered the name on the application form, attaching my spot to Sarah. In my previous life, at that moment I would have confronted them on the spot, but I ended up being blamed by my adoptive parents for having a narrow mind and jealousy of my sister, which not only wrecked the banquet but left me ostracized by everyone. And this time, I simply watched Sarah's unapologetic smugness. Sarah walked up to me with a red wine glass, looking down at me and murmuring, "Anna, I'm really sorry. Mom and Dad say my constitution needs to go out into the world to gain experience, so I'll take this spot without hesitation. You're doing so well academically. There will surely be more opportunities for you in the future, right?" "Of course." I gave a gentle, harmless smile, even reaching out to straighten her skirt. "I'm happy for you that you could obtain this spot." Seeing me so weak and compliant, Sarah's disdain in her eyes grew even stronger. Just then, I took out a pre-prepared document from my bag and leaned toward Sarah's ear in a slightly panicked whisper. "But, Sarah, just now the Overseas Exchange Program's campus representative called and said that because the spot was changed, we need to provide a high-value overseas guarantee letter. If you don't sign and submit it immediately, this spot will be automatically withdrawn by the system tonight." "What? Is there such a thing? Quick, give it to me." Sarah, hearing that the spot might be lost, grew anxious. I handed the document to her, lowering my voice. "Mom and Dad are toasting with the elders right now. Don't disrupt their mood. This document is just a routine guarantee, proof that you have the financial capacity to cover overseas expenses. You sign it there, and I'll fax it to the other party right away." Sarah didn't even bother to read the contents carefully, solely focusing on clutching the spot tightly. She snatched the pen from my hand, and with 2 swift strokes, she signed her name in the signatory and liability-bearing section, and casually stamped it with her personal seal. What she didn't know was that this document was not a school guarantee letter at all, but a debt transfer and joint liability guarantee agreement. In my previous life, my adoptive father used my name to privately raise a high-risk, high-interest business loan to turn over funds, and in the end, this enormous debt fell on me, driving me to the brink. And now, with Sarah's handwritten signature and seal on the joint liability guarantee, this soon-to-explode bad debt will be tied to Sarah and my adoptive parents as a matter of course. Sign it already. Hurry up and finish this. Don't delay my big affair. Sarah haughtily shoved the document back into my hand, turning away to continue enjoying everyone's flattery and praise. Carefully, I tucked this legally binding document into my chest. The bus roared to a stop in front of the university gate, the smell of asphalt baked by August sun lingering in the air. The registration hall was crowded with people, bustling with excitement. Sarah, dragging 3 large luggage suitcases, walked ahead of me with swagger. Today she had dressed up in a showy way, attracting the eyes of many freshmen and upperclassmen along the way, which greatly satisfied her vanity. According to the school's rules, this year's dormitory allocation adopts a pilot first-come, first-served on-site drawing system. As soon as we arrived at the dormitory office, Sarah could not wait to slam her ID card and admission letter onto the desk, raising her voice. "Teacher, I want a single room. I heard the school has an independent top-tier single suite. I want that one." The surrounding freshmen shot envious and jealous glances. The senior handling freshman registration looked at the computer screen with some hesitation and politely reminded, "Classmate, the independent single room you're talking about is an old, standalone special building. Although it has excellent privacy and occupies its own space, because it's quite old, the facilities are a bit complex. It's currently still in the observation period. Are you sure you want to give up the standard dorm and monopolize the entire suite? What's so complicated about it? Isn't it just luxurious treatment, an independent house with no one to bother you? Sarah wouldn't listen to any advice at all. Her mind was full of setting up the image of a top-tier rich girl in front of the whole school. She turned her head, smugly thrusting her chin at me, and her eyes shone with pride almost to overflow. Anna, don't blame your little sister for going first. Mom and Dad said I have a special constitution. Enjoying independent space is only natural. As for you, you should go live in those dirty, crowded dorms with many people. In the previous life, in the same place, Sarah cried and acted out, forcing me to give up my priority-picking rights. She moved into the enviable luxury single room, while I was shoved into a dark, damp basement-style renovation, suffering for a whole year. And this time, I had no intention of competing at all, not even lifting my eyelids. I calmly stepped forward, handed over my identity documents, and gave the dormitory administrator a light smile. Teacher, I won't choose a single room. Please arrange a normal 4-person shared dorm for me, preferably in the old building in the West District. The dormitory administrator looked at me with surprise, and a hint of admiration flashed in their eyes. That West District building may look a bit old on the outside, but internally it has just undergone a complete structural upgrade and eco-friendly landscaping. It's very comfortable to live in. Classmate, you have good judgment. What? You're going to live in a 4-person room? Sarah looked at me as if I were an idiot, and then couldn't help but snicker. Anna, you're really born with a cheap bone. Not fighting for something good. You go squeeze with a group of commoners in a crowded place. Don't come crying later and ask me to let you borrow my luxurious single. No, sister. I smiled at her, with no ripple in my eyes. I hope you'll be happy in your luxury home, but don't regret it. After getting the keys, Sarah, as if she had won a priceless treasure, strutted toward the independent single room in high heels. I carried my light luggage and walked toward the West District 4-person dorm without looking back. Pushing open the dorm door, warm light poured in through the bright floor-to-ceiling windows. 3 roommates had already arrived early and surrounded me warmly to help with my luggage. After greetings, I learned that these 3 seemingly plain girls are: 1 is the provincial top scorer in the college entrance exam, 1 is the daughter of the head of a national key laboratory, and the other is the heiress of a famous law firm founder. We happily sorted our belongings, talked about our future plans, and the atmosphere was harmonious and warm. And at that moment, from the direction of the West District single-person apartments, a faint, panicked scream suddenly echoed. I stood on the balcony, gazing from afar at that lonely standalone unit, a cold curve tugging at the corner of my mouth. In just the very first night after moving in, Sarah's standalone apartment, blown to the skies by the wind, revealed an extremely monstrous face. The so-called independent small building was originally an old factory building reclaimed by the school decades ago. Although the exterior had been repainted to fit the so-called high-end vintage style, the internal plumbing and electrical ducts were already severely aged and corroded. Most critically, in order to finish the work before the semester began, the walls used a large amount of illegally excessive low-quality fast-drying paint and poisonous glue, and the air was thick with the acrid smells of formaldehyde and aromatic hydrocarbons. At 11 o'clock in the deep night, a heavy rainstorm crashed down. The old ceiling of the single room suddenly cracked, and cold, turbid rainwater cascaded down like a waterfall, directly soaking Sarah's tens of thousands worth luxury bags and high-end clothes placed on the bed. Soon after, the aging and damaged wiring short-circuited in the thunder and lightning. Sparks crackled a few times, and the entire building fell into total darkness. Water flooded the gold mountain. A foul stench filled the air. Water and power were cut off, and the enclosed space was filled with a highly poisonous chemical gas, causing Sarah, who wore silk pajamas, to completely collapse. She screamed, stepping in the accumulating water as she fled the room, badly stumbling toward the dormitory management center to demand a room change. However, the dormitory manager calmly checked the register and processed it impartially. Sarah, when you chose your room, I warned repeatedly that this standalone building's facilities are complex. This is a special room type you signed for with your signature and fingerprint. Now the entire campus dormitory is full. There are simply no empty rooms for you to switch to. Facing the whispers and snickers of the surrounding onlookers, Sarah was in a bind and could not let go of her carefully constructed persona of a wealthy heiress living alone. She could only grit her teeth, spend a fortune to hire private workers to come in for repairs, and stubbornly continue to live there. And in the bright, tidy 4-person dorm in the West District, the scene was completely different. My 3 roommates each possessed their own talents and were straightforward in character. The top student in the class, Claire, organized the most elite comprehensive university study materials. Vivian, from a prestigious law family, was well versed in various legal clauses and rights-protecting methods. And Elena, from a scientific research family, promptly brought out a portable air detector to help us thoroughly inspect and purify our 4-person room, leaving no room for doubt. In this relaxed and harmonious atmosphere, the 4 of us formed a learning and startup group. With the sharp business sense and rich academic experience accumulated from my past life, I drafted a venture plan in the first week of school about the integration of artificial intelligence with traditional legal aid. When I presented this plan at the university's freshman research project recruitment fair, it instantly caused a sensation. The eyes of renowned alumni, entrepreneurs, and department leaders in the audience were filled with awe. And the plan was unanimously approved to become the school's sole qualification for a key project to directly connect with a national-level venture capital fund, which, without suspense, landed in my hands. When Sarah, standing in the audience with her clothes tattered and a red rash on her face from the poison in the wall paint, saw all this, her jealousy threatened to burn away her sanity. She clenched her fists tightly, nails sinking deep into her flesh, gazing fiercely at me, who stood under the spotlight, the center of everyone's attention, with a venomous look as cruel as a viper. And I merely stood at the podium, smiling, looking down on her with a haughty gaze. The campus freshman welcome party is the school's most anticipated event, featuring not only representatives from each department but also inviting numerous renowned alumni, corporate sponsors, and famous media reporters. In order to salvage the face she had lost earlier in the dormitory and at the recruitment fair, Sarah poured enormous sums into preparations a month before the party. She not only boldly ran for the positions of New Star of the Year and Outreach Officer in the Student Union Arts Department, but also publicly claimed that she would unveil a set of exclusively designed eco-friendly clothing at the party, a piece titled Rebirth, to craft a persona of a glamorous and talented campus beauty. What she didn't know was that the so-called exclusive design she took pride in was actually something she secretly browsed in my draft box a few days ago, photographed with her phone, and copied in full. In her past life, she used this tactic to win the tutor's praise and naturally took away my Artistic Innovation Award that belonged to me. On the night of the party, the auditorium was brilliantly lit and packed to capacity. Sarah wore a luxurious custom gown, while backstage she was dressed to the nines. Seeing me sitting in a simple, solid-colored suit at the side area, she stomped over in stilettos, lifted her chin, and leaned close to my ear to sneer in a very low voice. "Anna, did you see those top sponsors and alumni on stage? After my work is displayed, I will be hired directly as the head of the outreach department and naturally receive a graduation recommendation letter. And you, no matter how great your research is, can only stay at the bottom as my background prop for the rest of your life?" I glanced at her lightly, and a hint of an intriguing smile tugged at my lips. "Really? Then I hope your piece Rebirth blows everyone away tonight," Sarah snorted, strutting onto the stage with arrogant swagger. The stage lights dimmed abruptly, then a brilliant spotlight shone on Sarah. She smiled, took the microphone, and with a soft, elegant voice introduced her original design concept to the audience, while the big screen displayed her meticulously prepared PPT and close-up details of her design drafts. Many freshmen and unsuspecting seniors in the audience gasped in awe at her talent and beauty. The student union leaders and sponsor representatives nearby nodded, seemingly highly satisfied with her performance. "Next, please enjoy the complete creative process from initial draft to final version of this collection," Sarah said confidently with a wave of her hand, signaling the control room to play the video file she brought. However, the screen flickered, and what played was not her prepared glamorous promotional video, but a high-definition surveillance footage and a screen recording of a computer. In the footage, it was the midnight corridor of a 4-person dorm. Sarah, in pajamas, crept into my workspace like a thief, rummaging through my design drafts, taking out her phone to photograph each manuscript from every angle. Moreover, a timestamp certificate from the Authoritative Copyright Certification Center was shown on the right side of the video, 3 months ago. Every draft and color palette of this set had already been completed under my name and recorded in the blockchain digital certificate of the National Copyright Bureau. The whole venue exploded in shock. What's going on? Is this plagiarism? Oh my God. Even the draft dates and copyright certificates are from 3 months ago. This is despicable, stealing someone else's work and presenting it as one's own, even in front of the whole school. The audience's whispers burst like thunder. Sponsors and renowned alumni instantly wore grim looks, and the student union president stood up with a face ashen. On the stage, Sarah's face went pale in an instant, and she stiffened in place. She hurriedly shouted at the control panel, "Turn it off! Turn it off! This is fake. Anna is maliciously framing me. She's spreading rumors." Right at that moment, I slowly walked onto the stage, holding a wireless microphone, my voice calm and clear, echoing to every corner of the venue. Sarah, this set of design drafts for Rebirth was a work I created in June this year to respond to the environmental theme exhibition. All original project files and copyright certificates have been notarized and filed. If you insist that this is your original work, could you please explain on site why your design drawing on page 3, bottom left corner, bears my personally created miniature invisible signature pattern? The large screen instantly zoomed in, magnifying the tiny letter A at the edge of the design drawing to the extreme. Ironclad evidence. Beyond a doubt. Sarah's body trembled violently. Her legs went weak, and under the gaze of thousands, she collapsed on the stage center. The reporters, cameras like long guns, and the thousands of students and teachers in the audience held up their phones, capturing her present embarrassment, ugliness, and fear from all angles. Given Sarah's serious issues with academic integrity and ethics, the head of the school disciplinary inspection committee stood up at once, his voice cold as he announced over the public address, "Cancel all of Sarah's eligibility to participate in the evening event, cancel her candidacy for the student council, and file a case, initiating an investigation into her academic misconduct." To the sound of the crowd's tide of contempt and curse, Sarah lay on the stage, covering her face, letting out a desperate cry. The plagiarism scandal at the party exploded on campus forums and communities at astonishing speed. Sarah's persona as the rich, brilliant school belle collapsed overnight, becoming the school's ongoing joke. Seeing her reputation ruined at school, Sarah fell into hysterical frenzy. She cried and complained to her adoptive parents, shifting all the blame and shame onto me. Early the next morning, my adoptive father's calls pounded in from the moment the line connected, and his furious roar came through the receiver. "Anna, you ingrate, you white-eyed wolf. Sarah is your sister, and you're the one who destroyed her reputation and her future in front of the entire school faculty and students. You must immediately go to the school's academic affairs office to withdraw the report and issue a statement saying you personally handed the drawings to Sarah. Otherwise, I will freeze all your bank cards, cut off your tuition and living expenses, and make you pack up and leave the university." Standing in the corridor outside the dormitory building, listening to the furious threats on the other end of the phone, I could not help but suppress a faint smile. In the past life, they used this kind of total financial blockade to force me to bow to Sarah, to admit my mistakes, and even willingly become her stand-in and gun for her. But they forgot that I'm no longer the cowardly girl they could control. "Dad, cutting off financial support is your right," I answered with an exceptionally calm and flat tone. "However, before you freeze my accounts, there is one thing I must remind you of. Don't try to play tricks with me here." My adoptive father cut me off harshly on the other end of the phone. 3 months ago, the private high-interest loan of as much as $5 million, taken out under my name, has raised concerns about the borrower's identity, and the financial regulatory authorities have noticed the abnormal flow of funds. I paused, my voice cold as ice, and not long ago at the admission banquet, Sarah had already signed as a full joint guarantor on the repayment agreement and the joint and several guarantee. and stamped her personal seal. The other end of the line fell into dead silence at once. My adoptive father's heavy breathing was clearly audible on the phone. Evidently, he was jolted and at a loss by this news. You're talking nonsense. How could Sarah sign such a thing? The original agreement and the notarized legal effect certificate have already been copied to the bank's risk control department and the court enforcement bureau. I spoke each word slowly. If this loan defaults or is involved in tax evasion or illegal cash out, the court will be the first to freeze and seize, and it will be all of Sarah's assets, as well as the illegal running liquidation company under you and your wife. Anna, you crazy. I'm your adoptive father. How dare you set a trap and scheme against us? My adoptive father completely lost control, his roars nearly tearing the microphone apart. This isn't a trap. This is simply the fair judgment of the law. I hung up directly, adding his number to my blacklist. Then I opened my computer and logged into the already registered personal startup account. In that summer before enrollment, relying on the memories from my previous life and my professional knowledge, I had already earned my first pot of gold in early-stage US stock and blockchain projects. Now the account balance was enough to support me through my studies and even to start a business, completely unnecessary to depend on my adoptive parents' alms. 30 minutes later, the bank's legal team and the court's filing notice arrived as scheduled. My adoptive father's company was lawfully seized for suspected illegal misappropriation of funds and evasion of enormous taxes. All liquid assets and properties under his name were forcibly frozen. Accustomed to spending lavishly, the adoptive parents instantly descended into hell, while Sarah, the co-signer bearing joint liability, found her phone overwhelmed with collection calls and court summons all at once. In a state of extreme panic and despair, Sarah didn't even bother putting on her shoes, stumbling out of her dim, damp single room in a daze, and, like insane, charged down to the 4-person dormitory in the West District. She wore stained pajamas, her face flushed with terrifying red patches from an allergic reaction to toxic varnish, her eyes roaming wildly, completely losing her former regal, young lady air. Anna, get out here. You demon. You ruined my entire family. She screamed hysterically from the dormitory staircase, drawing countless passing students to stop and stare. The crowd of students gathering in front of the dormitory grew increasingly dense, and the pointing and snide remarks stabbed at Sarah's already fragile self-esteem like countless needles. In a frenzy, she slammed against the security doors of the West Campus dormitory, her eyes red, the red rash on her face blistering and inflamed by sweat, looking ferocious and terrifying. Because of the deadly fast-drying toxic paint and severely excessive benzene compounds in that so-called single detached room, her respiratory and skin systems had long since suffered serious damage. On top of that, the countless debt collection calls and court summons she had received in the past few days tormented her, pushing her to the brink of a mental collapse. Anna, come out! Return the quota to me! Return the money from my home to me! She cried hoarsely downstairs. Everyone, don't be fooled by her. She's a demon. She's using despicable means to trap me. The security system was firmly guarded by the guards, and the onlookers did not show her any sympathy. The plagiarism incident at the party had already ruined her reputation, and people had long lost trust in her wild performances. I straightened my collar and walked calmly down the stairs. When the glass doors swung open, Sarah pounced on me like a crazed dog. But before she could get close, Vivian, a roommate from the law school, and several burly security guards pounced ahead of her and pinned her to the ground. Let go of me, Anna. What right do you have to treat me this way? Sarah struggled, her fingernails digging deep into the cement, leaving crimson wounds. Her eyes full of hatred and despair. I stopped in front of her, looking down on her with a calm gaze as still as a dead pool of water. Sarah, no one is taking your things. You were determined to seize the single room. You begged to sign the loan agreement, and you were the one who sneaked into my room at midnight to film the design draft. All you've suffered today, was it caused by others, or by yourself? You did this on purpose. You knew from the start that the house was toxic. You knew there was something wrong with that agreement. Sarah suddenly seemed to understand something, her pupils dilating violently as she screamed, "You're scheming against me. You've always been scheming against me." I bent down, leaned close to her ear. and spoke in a voice so cold that only the two of us could hear. In the previous life, when you poisoned my drinking water with toxic pesticides, did you ever think you would meet today? Hearing the words previous life and toxic, Sarah's body suddenly stiffened, the madness in her eyes instantly turning into extreme fear and disbelief. She looked at me as if I were a monster, lips trembling, her whole body like she'd fallen into an ice cave, so that even her screams were stuck in her throat. She finally understood that the person in front of her was no longer the timid girl who could be bullied and manipulated, but a demon who had crawled up from the depths of hell to exact her vengeance. Anna, sister, I was wrong. I beg you. Sarah suddenly broke down in tears, the arrogance of a moment ago vanishing. She started kowtowing to me wildly, with tears, snot, and the blood and mud on her face smeared across her cheeks. I don't want to live in that single room anymore. My face is almost rotting. My lungs hurt so badly. Please tell the school to move me into your 4-person room. I'll be your slave. I beg you to spare my parents' company. The collectors will kill us if they come after us. The surrounding students all wore expressions of disgust. The previous arrogance when fighting for the single room had become ugliness now as she lay on the ground begging. I slowly straightened up, took a step back, pulled out a tissue to wipe my hands, and looked at her coldly. Sarah, moving into that single room was your own pursuit of superiority, and reaching this point today is the price of your shameless greed. No one in this world is obligated to pay for your malice. I turned around and gave a slight nod to the security guard and the dorm supervisor beside me. Teacher, this student is suspected of provoking trouble in a public area, seriously disrupting the dormitory area, and her mental state is extremely unstable. It is recommended to contact a psychiatrist and campus police. Okay, we will contact the campus police and the health department immediately. The security guard answered decisively. No, I won't go. Anna, you can't treat me like this. In Sarah's sharp, broken-out wail, she was forcibly carried onto a car by campus police and the arriving paramedics. After a brief treatment at the hospital, Sarah did not bow down to admit her mistake. Instead, like a desperate, cornered mad dog, she prepared to unleash a final, ferocious counterattack. She knew she had ruined her own reputation in the real-world academic and campus circles, so she set her sights on internet traffic and public opinion. She spent a fortune hiring an illegal online fan army, presenting herself as the victim across major short video platforms and social forums, posting a long article titled Expose. A famous university female bully forcing a classmate, poisoning her appearance and driving her to despair. In the article, she portrayed herself as innocent, weak, and oppressed by her sister due to an impoverished family background. She posted photos of her severe facial inflammation and disfigurement, blaming me entirely for everything. She claimed I used tactics to steal her shared dorm, forcing her to stay in a dilapidated shack with toxic paint. Even spread rumors that I hired organized crime-style debt collectors to bankrupt her parents and publicly smeared me outside the dormitory building. With the Water Army's amplification and some marketing accounts mindlessly forwarding, the topic shot to the hot search list overnight. This is too terrifying. She actually harmed her own sister like this? How could such a ruthless person remain at a top university? They must be expelled. Joint report. I advised the police to directly file a case against this bully. The internet was flooded with insults and doxing as if by a storm. Many extreme netizens even published my personal phone number and ID online, and my phone instantly received thousands of abusive messages and harassing calls. The college leaders urgently scheduled a meeting with me. The pressure was suffocating. If it were anyone else, the online abuse would likely have driven them to a mental breakdown. But I did not rush to respond online to clarify, nor did I show any panic. I calmly changed my SIM card, contacted my roommate Vivian and her top-tier legal team, and, leveraging the data analytics system from my startup project, conducted 24/7 data collection and evidence locking on all hot topics, tracking post IPs, fund flows, and Water Army accounts behind the posts. I not only obtained Sarah's and the Water Army company leaders' WhatsApp chat records and transfer receipts, but also, with hacker-grade tracing techniques, uncovered solid evidence that the Water Army company purchased large number of fake accounts through illegal channels to manipulate public opinion and spread malicious rumors. On the third day, When online public opinion peaked and countless netizens gathered under my social accounts demanding that I get out of the university or even die to atone, I publicly released a livestream preview through the official school account and major mainstream media. At 8 o'clock in the evening, the live broadcast opened on time, with millions of viewers flooding the room and the comments filled with endless insults and attacks. I wore a sharp black suit, sitting calmly in front of the camera. "Hello everyone, I am Anna." I got straight to the point, my voice steady and empowering. "Regarding the recent vicious rumors that I bully a classmate and am suspected of illegal activity, I will disclose all the facts and truths here." I did not waste a single word. I cut straight to a screen display in the live room. The first thing shown was the complete security footage and audio records from the dormitory lobby on the day of housing selection, where Sarah loudly demanded the single suite while I had always courteously chosen a 4-person room. The staff repeatedly reminded about safety, which Sarah ignored. Next, I displayed the sampling report from an authoritative testing agency, the original notarized debt guarantee signed by Sarah, and the National Copyright Office's timestamp proof. The most deadly hit was saved for last. I directly displayed the court-issued case initiation receipt, as well as the confession statement and financial transactions of the head of the online troll farm company. According to the criminal law and relevant internet regulations, I said to the camera with a gaze as sharp as a blade, "Sarah and the online troll farm company she hires have constituted severe defamation, libel, and provocation." I looked straight into the lens, eyes piercing. "I have formally reported this to the public security authorities. All account owners involved, the head of the troll farm company, and the main rumormonger will all receive summons from the court. Without leniency, the truth will be revealed to all." The barrage of furious insults that had been flying wildly suddenly halted at this moment, and then a flood of reversals and astonishment followed. "My goodness! This isn't a vulnerable group. It's clearly a bunch of clowns lifting a stone to smash their own feet. So satisfying. The evidence chain is directly sealed. This is hardcore counter-killing. Support the blogger to press charges to the end. Make the rumormongers and the trolls all go to prison." The online storm instantly flipped in a single night. Police, guided by the precise evidence I provided, launched a nighttime raid and netted the troll farm company in one go, while Sarah, the instigator, was lawfully subjected to criminal coercive measures in a hospital ward. After the storm of online comments subsided, Sarah was released on bail pending investigation for defamation and making trouble. But with no way out, she still treated her university diploma and degree as her last lifeboat to turn her life around. She knew her academic abilities had long since deteriorated, and in order to graduate smoothly and obtain a credential for advancing to a higher social stratum, Sarah began targeting a key mentor on the department's academic committee. She leveraged the last bit of connections she had accumulated to hook up with a professor responsible for thesis evaluation and graduate school recommendations. To exchange for academic resources and high marks on her thesis, she even resorted to improper means, bribery and benefit transfer, attempting to manipulate behind the scenes and appropriate the results of other outstanding students in her group. However, what she didn't know was that while she was busy with shady deals, I had already risen to heights beyond her reach on a path of transparency and integrity. With the full cooperation of 3 divine roommates in the West District dormitory, our team's AI plus legal tech startup project entered a breakout phase. On the national finals stage of the National College Innovation and Entrepreneurship Competition, I stood on stage to pitch for the team, facing judges from dozens of top national investment institutions and venerable scholars. I calmly and confidently demonstrated our system architecture, commercial implementation model, and social public welfare value. The judges gave near-perfect scores, the highest in history. We not only won the National Special Prize and Gold Prize in one fell swoop, but also received several million in startup support funds. On site, 3 of the world's top technology giants and venture capital firms competed for exclusive cooperation rights to our project, handing out prospective 10 billion yuan valuations on the spot, and offered me top-level internships and positions straight up to headquarters executives. Mainstream media rushed to report the news. The Wall Street Journal and domestic top financial journals named me the most promising young entrepreneur of the year. I stood in the center of the award ceremony, bathed in a blaze of glory, admired by thousands. And on the very day I stood at the pinnacle of honor, Sarah's behind-the-scenes manipulations reached a crushing end. I had long noticed her secret collusion with that illegal mentor. With the help of Vivian and her legal team, I collected all evidence of Sarah bribing the mentor, secretly trading in academic papers, fabricating data, and infringing on others' research results, building an airtight chain of evidence and submitting it anonymously to the University Disciplinary Committee and the National Education Supervision Authorities. The investigative team acted quickly. On the same day, they raided and sealed the implicated mentor's office and accounts. In the face of such solid evidence, the involved mentor was dismissed on the spot and turned over to judicial authorities. As for Sarah, the university publicly announced on its official website and large screens. Upon investigation, our student Sarah engaged in serious bribery, academic rumors, the sale and purchase of papers, and the misappropriation of others' results, with misconduct and illegal actions of severe nature and very bad influence. In accordance with the People's Republic of China degree regulations and university rules and disciplines, the University Academic Committee has decided to impose the expulsion from the student registry, permanently canceling all student status and academic qualifications at this university. The news triggered cheers across the campus. When Sarah, holding an expulsion notice like a judgment, was driven out of the campus by the security office, she happened to see on the huge LED screen at the gate the scene of me giving a television interview. On screen, I was confident, graceful, and wise, with a bright future ahead. While off screen, she was expelled from school, with a long record, in debt, and her appearance ruined, reduced to a complete societal useless person, losing her student status, saddled with enormous debts, and with the criminal sentence from the court looming. Sarah was utterly cornered with no way out. She was staying in a dark, dilapidated basement rental on the outskirts of town, hiding in the dark all day and staring at her phone screen. On the screen were reports of me, as an outstanding graduate representative and a young entrepreneur, making headlines. The overwhelming contrast and the bone-deep jealousy gnawed away at her last remaining sanity. In her eyes, all the misfortunes she had suffered were not due to her own greed and malice, but entirely because of my existence. As long as I disappeared from this world, all the nightmares would end. On the eve of the graduation ceremony, the whole school was busy preparing a grand graduation party and the degree awarding ceremony. I, as an outstanding graduate and head of the venture project, needed to go to the archives on the top floor of the office building before the event to sign the final transfer of academic results and the enterprise incubation agreement. This itinerary was not a secret, and Sarah, lurking near the campus, quietly probed it. The late-night office building was eerily quiet. I walked down the empty corridor in high heels, my footsteps echoing in the silent space. However, even before I entered this building, my phone had already received a security alert. The camera system at the end of the corridor had its wiring maliciously cut about half an hour ago. In my past life, she used the same dirty trick to trap me into a desperate situation on a night when no one was paying attention. With the same playbook, how could I fall once more? I calmly pushed open the wooden door of the archives and casually pressed the switch on the wall. Just as the lights came on, a sickly, grotesquely defiant figure suddenly charged out from the shadow behind the door. Sarah held a sharp little knife in her hand, her eyes flickering with madness and perversity, roaring as she lunged straight toward my heart. "Anna! Drop dead! Once you're dead, all this is mine!" Her speed was incredibly fast, driven by a desperate gamble. Yet I didn't even take a half step back. At the moment her knife was less than 10 centimeters from me, the side door to the normally closed backup compartment burst open with a crash. 2 agile professional security guards acted like lightning, a precise wrist grab knocking the weapon from Sarah's hand, then a throw, pinning her to the ground, tightly holding her hands. Clang, a crisp sound, the knife fell onto the cold tile, making a sharp, jarring impact. Several uniformed police officers and the director of campus security soon stepped out of the adjoining room, their body cameras' red lights flashing clearly, recording the whole perilous and clearly criminal scene. Sarah lay on the floor, her face pressed against the cold tiles, utterly stunned. She looked around at the already ambushed police and security, then looked up at me, tall and composed, with disbelief in her eyes. You knew I would come? You set up this trap in advance?" She screamed hoarsely, fear in her voice. "Sarah, Every move you make, even your transaction records for buying a regulated knife on the black market, were already delivered to the police 3 days ago. I leaned down, looking at her twisted and utterly ugly face, my voice steady and devoid of warmth. You think you're hiding in the shadows, but in reality, you're just a trapped animal rushing into a dead end. No! It's impossible. I'm unwilling to accept this. Why are you living so well? Why are you taking everything from me? She raved, crying and shouting like a dying venomous snake. I didn't take anything from you. I looked at her coldly. You chose the road yourself. You committed the crime yourself. This time, no one can save you. The police stepped forward and clicked the handcuffs onto Sarah's wrists. Facing irrefutable evidence of attempted murder with multiple offenses, she would no longer face probation or bail. She would endure a long, indefinite prison life behind bars. Watching her desperate, frenzied silhouette being forcibly led away by the police, I took a deep breath and turned to leave. In the Supreme Court's public trial hall, the atmosphere was solemn and austere. Today is the final judgment day for the Sarah case, as well as for the foster parents' family, who are suspected of major economic crimes, causing trouble, and attempted intentional harm. The spectator seats were full. Besides dozens of authoritative media reporters, there were school leaders, students, and friends and family who had witnessed this storm firsthand in the past. At the defendant's bench, Sarah wore the cold inmate's vest, with handcuffs and leg shackles producing dull, piercing metal clanks as she moved. In just a few months, she had grown thin to almost nothing but skin and bones, her eyes sunken and hollow, her gaze scattered and empty. The pride she once took in being the rich heiress could no longer be seen, as her skin bore scars from chronic allergies and toxin residues she never fully treated. Sitting beside her, the foster parents looked equally pale, with white hair and stooped postures. After the financial chain had completely broken, and their company had been investigated for illegal cashing and enormous tax evasion, they had not only lost all their property but also faced enormous compensation lawsuits. The judge struck the gavel. The loud, steady voice resounded through the courtroom. After this court's investigation, the court's proceedings, and the examination of all evidence chain submitted by the prosecution, this court renders the following verdicts against the defendant Sarah and her co-defendants. The defendant Sarah is convicted of intentional homicide, attempted defamation, incitement, and academic bribery. Multiple offenses compound. She is sentenced to 15 years of fixed-term imprisonment, deprived of political rights for 5 years, and fined. The co-defendants in the same case are convicted of illegal fundraising from the public, tax evasion, and embezzlement, and are sentenced to 8 years of imprisonment, with all personal property confiscated. The cold, righteous verdict echoed in the courtroom. Hearing the sentence, the foster mother collapsed into her chair, letting out a despairing wail. The foster father bowed his head in mourning, his whole body trembling violently. And at the defendant's bench, when Sarah heard the number 15 years, her pupils contracted sharply, and she seemed to be stripped of her bones, collapsing rigidly to the floor. 15 years, the brightest years of youth, would be spent behind cold, closed iron bars, and by the time she came out, everything would have changed beyond recognition, and her appearance would be unrecognizable. She trembled as she turned her head and looked at me, who sat on the plaintiff's seat. I wore a tailored, crisp white suit, sitting there gracefully, my expression calm and composed, with no anger in my eyes, nor the pride of a victor, only a clear-eyed, indifferent understanding of fate and its causes. Anna, I beg you, save me. I am your sister. Sarah suddenly shouted like mad, trying to break away from the prison guards. I don't want to go to prison. I don't want to serve 15 years. Mom and Dad, please save me. The guards coldly restrained her, locked her up, and dragged her away from the courtroom by force. Her piercing screams and the clanking of chains against the floor faded down the corridor until they vanished completely. I slowly stood up, bowed slightly to the judge and the bench, and then, under the eyes of everyone's respect and blessing, walked out of the courthouse with steady steps. Outside, the sun was blazing in a boundless sky, and gold lights spilled across the earth. A month later, in the university gymnasium, A grand graduation ceremony and degree conferral was held with great pomp. Streamers floated across the hall, salutes fired, and thousands of graduates dressed in bachelor robes wore expressions of hope and anticipation for the future. As the representative of this year's outstanding graduates and the founder of a technology company exclusively invested by a national venture fund, I stood on the university's highest platform for speeches. Behind me stood 3 excellent roommates who had fought alongside me, Claire, Vivian, and Elena, now all making names for themselves in academia and the legal world. They waved to me with smiles from the audience, pride shining in their eyes. I steadied the microphone, looking at the dense crowd and the endless light, and my voice rang clearly and firmly through the entire gym. Dear teachers and students, hello, I am Anna. 4 years ago, when I stepped onto this campus, I too faced life's choices. Someone told me that seizing the best resources, exploiting others, and piling on appearances with hypocrisy and calculation would be the shortcut to success. The students in the audience held their breath, listening quietly. But I spent 4 years proving that everything gained by grabbing into seat is but a cloud of vapor, fragile at a touch. Fate may play cruel jokes on us, even push us into despair and darkness, but what truly decides our lives is not the kind of quagmire we are in, but whether, when faced with choices, we still hold fast to kindness, to a belief in justice, and the courage to tear through the darkness with our own hands. Do not envy the seeming shortcuts of vanity, and do not bow to any malice. When we choose to tread firmly and walk upright, the whole world will make way for us. After the final words fell, the hall fell silent for a moment, then erupted in thunderous, prolonged applause and cheers. The dean himself walked onto the stage and solemnly handed me the excellent degree certificate, lifting the tassel from the cap for me. Anna, you are the pride of this school. Congratulations. Your future is limitless. Thank you, Principal, I replied with a smile, taking the certificate. When the ceremony ended and everyone threw their bachelor's hats high into the blue sky, I looked up, facing the dazzling yet warm sun, and took a deep breath. The cold of the poison that killed me in a past life, the brutal pain of betrayal and torture, vanished completely in that moment. I not only exacted my own revenge by my own hand, sending the perpetrators and the wicked to their rightful hell, but also used my wisdom and dignity to reconstruct a new life path toward peace and glory. The sun was bright, the breeze rustled the treetops, and my great era had only just begun. The outcast, the air in prison is forever murky, exuding a strange bad smell that's a mix of dampness and disinfectant. Sarah sits on a cold iron chair, handcuffs fixed to the ring on the iron table. Her hair has been cut into a neat short style. Skin that had once been well cared for is rough and yellowing, and fine lines, ages unfitting, creep to the corners of her eyes. 15 years of prison time have barely passed a year, but every minute and second here to her feels as long as torture. Someone's visiting. The guard's cold voice broke the stillness of the visitation room. A spark of frenzy instantly glowed in Sarah's eyes. A foster parent? Or those friends who once spent her money? Could someone finally have discovered her innocence and decided to help her apply for a retrial? However, when a familiar figure sat down across from the thick bulletproof glass, Sarah's blood froze in an instant. Sitting opposite her was Vivian. Vivian wore a crisp top-tier law firm partner suit, and calmly took down the intercom phone hanging on the wall. Sarah trembled, grabbing the phone, her voice hoarse as a windbag. Why is it you? What about Anna? Why doesn't she dare to come see me? Is she guilty of something? Vivian looked at the hysterical Sarah across the glass, her eyes cold and scornful, like looking at an ant. Guilty of what? Sarah, do you think you still have any right for Anna to personally spare time to see you now? You're lying. She's relying on schemes to plot against me. She took everything from me. Sarah's screams echoed in the narrow compartment, drawing the nearby guard's sideways glance and warning. I'm here today not for Anna, but as her chief legal counsel, to perform my duty of informing you. Vivian slowly pulled out several legal documents from her briefcase and pasted them on the glass. First, the properties under your parents' names that were frozen and the illegal assets have all been judicially auctioned. After repaying the usurious loans and tax fines you signed for back then, there remains a several $million debt gap. Given that your parents are in prison and have no ability to repay, The court has formally and legally classified them as debtors who cannot be trusted to comply, and no liquid assets may remain under their name. Sarah's eyes widened, lips quivering violently. Then after I come out. Second. Vivian cut her off coldly. Your record of purchasing controlled substances on the dark web, and the prior life. When she said those two words, Vivian paused, revealing a knowing, ironic smile. And the additional evidence of your multiple attempts to poison have been anonymously reported by a third party to the higher prosecutor's office. The prosecution is currently pursuing you for illegal possession of dangerous substances. If convicted, your sentence may be extended by 5 to 8 years. No. You're forcing me to die. Sarah crazily banged her head against the bulletproof glass, producing dull thuds. How can she live so well? How? Vivian watched her feeble struggle with utter disgust. Want to know how Anna is doing now? This morning, Anna's tech company she founded officially listing on NASDAQ, with a market value exceeding $100 billion. As the founder of the youngest unicorn company in history, she graced the cover of Time magazine. And with her donation, her alma mater established a brand new youth science and legal aid fund. In the first batch of funded impoverished students, not one achieved through theft or forgery. Each of them is walking a path of integrity. Vivian stood up, looking down at Sarah, who had completely collapsed into the chair, and coldly buckled the briefcase. Sarah, Anna asked me to tell you. Everything you ever desperately tried to steal is, in her eyes, completely worthless. The height she stands on now is a peak you could never even glimpse from below in this lifetime. After speaking, Vivian hung up the phone and walked out of the prison gates without looking back, leaving Sarah entirely in endless darkness and regret. On the other side of the glass, Sarah held her head and cried out in despair and misery on the cold floor. But this time, no one would pity her, and no one would come to save her. Meanwhile, in the top-floor sea-view office of a coastal city, beyond the enormous floor-to-ceiling window stretched the boundless blue sea, tumultuous waves under a clear sky. I wore a simple, elegant white dress and held a steaming cup of coffee, calmly overlooking the magnificent panorama of the bustling metropolis. On the tablet on the desk, a news broadcast was playing. It is reported that a global public charitable research project initiated by the famous young entrepreneur Miss Anna has officially launched today. The project aims to provide non-paid legal and financial support to young female entrepreneurs. The door was gently pushed open, and Claire, Vivian, and Elena walked in chatting, holding celebratory champagne they had just poured. Anna, I've informed the authorities and the prosecutor's office. That woman will never be able to turn things around in her lifetime. Vivian smiled and handed me a glass of champagne. Thank you for your hard work, Vivian. I turned to them and clinked glasses with them. The sound of the glass clinking was bright and pleasing, like the firmest covenant we four had forged along the way. What are the plans next? Our CEO big shot? Claire blinked. The company is already listed. Should we take a vacation and travel the world? I walked to the floor-to-ceiling window, watching the sunlight cast thousands of golden rays on the sea, and a confident, relaxed smile curled at the corners of my mouth. The shadows, schemes, hatred, and toxicity of the past life, with the final fate of that walled-up wreck, had already completely dissipated. Revenge was never the end of my life. It was just the process of me sweeping away the weeds on the roadside with ease. The real excitement lies in the boundless stars and seas I have opened up with my own hands and wisdom. Vacation? No. I smiled, lifting the wine glass, and gently tapped the sky and the sea. Our journey has only just begun. The sun shone on me, bringing warmth and brilliance. My arrow will never fade.